Hello, I'm Andreas Lazaris from the Medical School of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. It was a great honor for me to be invited to make this talk at the 8th World Congress of Education, and it was a great joy to prepare this presentation. The Congress is being held in a country which is well known for the efficiency of its educational system, so it is a very happy coincidence. What I have to say as a preliminary comment is that it's not for us to say if we are doing something special in teaching methods and education. This is for you to judge and criticize, and if you find something interesting, you can think positively to implement it in your own educational endeavors. What I can assure you is that we have an active interest in doing the best we can in this process. Of course, we are talking about education. Yes, this is something that many people do, talking about education. However, we should take into account that education is a viable process. So there is not only need for talking, but for implementing what you think best. So let's go on. This may be the most important slide in my opinion, because what I want to state is that the personal sense of meaning in life is, for me, in my opinion, the determinant element for the provision of education and cultivation. So we know that there is a percentage of people who adopt religion to navigate their lives. We should not underestimate religion. However, I always prefer the term faith or religious faith, because religion is something that can be considered as a human system of having some manipulation over people and having to do with financial resources, which are for me of no importance as at least compared to the faith. Other people create their own philosophy of life without thinking about it or looking about it so much, and they act accordingly. And there is nothing wrong if they are happy with this. However, it is not always possible for them to be teachers. And others take the time to examine and review their lives in order that they live it more happily. So, in any case, the happiness of life is related to the cultivation of our character. With what aim? We have to balance and connect the care for ourselves with the care for other people. The ancient Stoic philosophers Hierocles, I think was the 2nd century, told us that there are some circles. The central circle is ourselves, and then we have another circle with the same center, which is our next of kin, our children, our wife, our brothers, sisters. Then we have the circle of people living in the same environment, the same city, and then we have all people on earth. So we must understand that taking care of ourselves, which is something of vital importance, because that's how we survive if we take care for ourselves, and to cover all our everyday needs, has to be connected with what we do for other people, because education is a sharing process. So we must think that when we are good teachers and we are actively interested in educating, we help ourselves. And not only in the sense that since I'm a doctor, I try to make my students good doctors so that I can take advantage of their medical services when I need these services. It's far beyond that. When you give something to somebody, something returns back to you. So we can think of this because education is very close to what you have to offer to other people, and we should not forget that. Of course, I have to say that I love technology, and I try to take full advantage of its utilities, despite the fact that it's been about half a century since I started being a teacher. Yes, it's a fact that years pass quite easily. So I do my best to utilize technology, because I believe that technology can help the improvement of education and of teaching. So here are some interactive groups, because being a pathologist, I have to teach how the histological lesions of all tissues and all diseases of the human bodies are imprinted on the tissues, cells, and DNA. So we have formed some interactive groups where students can get the grip of the professional situation that a pathologist lives in, and they can better understand what a pathologist does and how it helps the diagnosis of the patient and the treatment of the patients. So during these voluntary interactive groups of studying virtual slides, of course with the use of technology, we try to have a contact with people and just tell them what we do in our everyday routine. And this is something very important. And of course, this can be done with physical presence of the teacher, which is far preferable than doing it online. However, there are possibilities of interactivity with online education, provided that you are eager enough to cultivate these possibilities of online communication with the patients. So, apart from technology, is technology enough to make education better? I think no. It is essential, but it's not enough. Because in any sort of education, the teacher should feel like doing it. He must have or she must have an inner drive to truly offer to the students. So he has to be actively involved, not just having a perfunctory lesson, and he has to feel the responsibility of what he has to offer, so that he has updated knowledge of the subject that he teaches, and also a social conscience, because this is what you offer to other people and to society in general. So, as I previously said, there is something to come back to you, a benefit that comes back to you without asking for it. It comes on its own, as we said in the previous slide, with all those circles of people around us. And it is a matter of judging how we'll follow an individualistic way of thinking and active, or we will balance what we do for ourselves to what we do for other people. So, as we try to make it much more close to our everyday profession, there is a case-based learning approach. This is called experiential learning, or a simulation of what we do every day in our labs, and this can be shown in a textbook of the classical type, or in a platform like this one, which has been developed in the context of a European project, in which we have a step-by-step analysis of our everyday work as professionals, as professional pathologists, so the trainees can familiarize with all the steps that we follow in our jobs and get the grip of the practical dimension of our specialty, medical specialty. They have to judge which stains they have to order, how they will reach the final diagnosis, and give the valuable information to the clinicians. So, let's think now. If a student, a medical student, or yes, let's talk about medical students, spends his entire studies with a feeling that none of his teachers truly cares about him. And in the same time, the only contact he has with the outside world is through screens on the electronic devices, mobile phones and the rest. So what does this cause? He is isolated to a reality close to himself, and he is no longer able to communicate in a genuine way, in an authentic way. So this leads to tiredness, loss of empathy, and he cannot see the other people and communicate genuinely with them when he addresses other people live, in person. And think how disastrous this is for the doctor-patient relationship. So we have conventional teaching methods where we can say some things about empathy. However, these are not so crucial in developing a viable sense of empathy, because this is something we feel with our body and express it with our body, not only with our minds. So the question is how we will internalize empathy in our practice, everyday practice, as clinicians, as laboratory doctors, as I am, or generally as people of a society. So what we have to create? We have to create an educational environment that triggers the professionalism in the students. That means it gives them empirical stimuli to be doctors and gain self-confidence, and also create an environment of intellectual hospitality where students communicate between them and the teacher and develop communicative skills, and also they can object, they can doubt, and all these are very, very useful when we have to deal with humanistic education stimuli, because this is how the students will be developed not only as professionals, but potentially as persons, provided, of course, that this will be a free choice of them to do so, not something that we oblige them to do. So this is the intellectual hospitality concept, which open the perspectives of medicine, and it can unite the way our brain learns the medical education and, of course, the humanistic tradition in health, because medicine is a humanistic science. So, in our reality, all we need is more likes. So, all these social media which dominate our lives, of course, they are necessary, but there has to be a limit in their use. Why? Because if the human brain is triggered with multiple stimuli, then he loses interest in life and in communication. So this is not compatible with an intellectual hospitality. So we have to actively engage people with physical presence, not only through screens, and create a space for true dialogue and intellectual growth. So in this way, we can understand that medical students can evaluate art, letters, literature, poetry, and so they can have a dynamic transporting event as persons, not only as professionals. And this has to do with the condition that they have a sense of openness to learning and communicating. And this is something that can be cultivated with a proper way. Of course, humanism cannot be taught, empathy cannot be taught in the strict sense of teaching. However, it can be cultivated. So, what we think and the way we think and what we think has to do with our relationships and interactions. So if during the educational process we have positive interactions, not indifferent situations throughout the years of study, we must think of how we can approach knowledge and human relationships more deeply and understand science more fully, and in the final themselves live more abundantly, not only through screens. So the procedure that a doctor evaluates a poem or he evaluates a painting, a piece of art, shares common pathways with the way he can evaluate a patient and communicate with the patient. As the doctor communicates with the clinician, he can communicate with the artist beyond a piece of art. Have a look at these paintings. Both of them can cultivate our sense of empathy, and it is for us to decide what they tell to us and how we can put these tangible stimuli to our everyday practice. That's why we have developed a selective course, as an elective course in the medical school of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, called Humanistic Values and Modern Medicine. And so we give tangible and empirically viable cultivation stimuli in patients, so they can get these stimuli as pieces of literature or art and reflect and become engaged with them. We do not offer lectures on a theoretical basis. I do not say that they are useless. No, don't get me wrong. However, what I mean is that in order to cultivate empathy, we need direct experience, emotional engagement, and some intersubjective reflection. So here are two quite recent movies that we took some scenes and gave them to our students in the e-class, the e-portfolio of the lessons, and we had a discussion through the PC and of course with a physical presence in the auditorium, what they mean to them and what does this mean for their real life. How do these stimuli from art can be implemented in a positive way in our everyday relationships. And of course we have examples from philosophy. Here we have Plato's conception of the soul with the two horses and what they mean for the balance of our souls, novels, theatrical plays, musical stimuli, and the sculptures and famous paintings, and we discuss them in a very direct way. Our purpose is not to have a lecture on art and the history of art, but to live with this and understand and concept in a viable way what these stimuli can give us to our everyday life. So, of course, we need the physical presence, and not only in the auditorium, but some out-of-campus activities having to do with theatrical plays, concerts, and galleries, exhibitions, which we can have a sense of being together with the students and getting the same stimuli. And of course, this I think it has a positive response for our students, and let's hope that we'll have the situations to continue in this way. So, of course, we have some workshops where the students can express themselves. They'll take the brush and make their own paintings or take the photos, and we have the relevant exhibition. But we can also have some workshops that they can think of how they can express empathy to the patients. That means they can understand the situation of the patient so that he trusts them. The patient does not want us so much to be compassionate and share his problem. He wants us to understand his problem and make him believe that we are there for him and will do our best. So this will gain the trust to the patient, and in this way our therapies will be much more efficient. So since this is a body process having to do with how we stand in front of the patient, how we look at the patient, the gaze we previously said, so we need some practical examples. Of course, this should be conducted by an expert in some workshops that help us gain the professional identity, the professional branding, combined with all these capabilities with communication between us and between the patient, because modern medicine is a collaborative process, not a one-man show. So through our studies we learn to communicate with each other. So now, is there something for us to propose to our students, and firstly, primarily for the first year students, so that they can have full advantage of their studies? So they must understand that the medical courses are not just stimuli they get through their mobile devices with scrolling. No, we must let them understand that there needs some to get these stimuli, the educational stimuli, and deepen in science. Not in that superficial way that all these stimuli through electronic devices restrict us in the evaluation of the stimuli. Medical lessons cannot be treated as videos of so small deepening that they circulate through all these electronic devices. And always studying should be linked to the acquisition of the practical skills of a future professional. It's not just studying textbooks. There is so much beyond textbooks to be learned, so somebody becomes an efficient professional. And of course, all this cultivates a holistic perception of the patient and the disease, because the patient is not just the part of his body which shows a disease. The whole patient is ill. So we must treat not only the body, but also the mind of the patient, so that he can be cured efficiently. And of course, we can have some stimuli that will enhance personal growth and work-life balance, along with professional capacities. If you respond to tangible stimuli, such as those we provide through our elective course, we can hope that emotional intelligence, communication skills, teamwork, which is so important in modern medicine, and of course empathy, will be developed, and in this way all the educational goals will have been fulfilled. Here are the articles of our team in the literature, which of course you can have a look and criticize them, and if you find something interesting you can try to implement it in your own classes, because we're not here to tell you, of course, what to do, and we just give some stimuli for you to make it your own way, because the good teacher is not the one that imitates anything. He gets the stimuli and thinks if there is some use in them, in implementing them in his everyday teaching practice. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.